Welcome, Fitness Business Podcast family out there, to another sponsor episode here at the Fitness Business Podcast. We have Jarron Aizen with us. Jarron is the founder and the CEO of Hapana. Hapana is a studio and club management software company for really, you guys automate operations, you help to increase revenue and nurture client relations. Did I miss anything, Jarron?
No, that pretty much summarizes it. I mean, think about it as your day-to-day engine, your marketing engine, the way you interact with your clients and members on the day-to-day through your branded apps and integrated website widgets as well. So we like to cover off a lot of different areas. Great to be back here, Dory, and speaking to you and all the listeners.
Yeah, and I like to just stress that if it wasn't for sponsors like yourself and your company, the Fitness Business Podcast would not be here. So thank you so much for supporting all of our shows. You know, we put one, sometimes two out a week. We'd love to be the main educational platform for all of our listeners out there, and we just couldn't do it without sponsors like yourself. So thank you.
Well, we love the content and we love being part of this incredible brand of the Fitness Business Podcast and putting out all this educational content. So it's awesome to be part of it.
Great. Well, speaking of content, last time you were on, you were giving all of our listeners an update. Hapana had just recently rebranded. You touched a little bit upon that. And after we were done, I was like, you need to come back on and share your journey of rebranding what used to be One Fit Stop. And I mean, you completely changed the brand, which is now Hapana. And I want you to share your story with all of our FBP family.
Dory, it was an incredible journey, and it wasn't supposed to be this way at the beginning. And I say that because when we first started to have the discussions internally about working with a brand strategy agency, it was all about refreshing the One Fit Stop brand. We'd been operational in the fitness sector, working at the beginning of our journey in our life cycle with personal trainers, and we went to owner operated studios, then multi-unit studio, boutique operations, and club operations as well. And we took this journey through time as we evolved as a company and as a One Fit Stop. And everything that we learned from that journey, we wanted to encapsulate that in a new purpose and a brand refresh. So the intentions was always to, at the beginning, continue to be One Fit Stop and not do a complete 360 shift on the actual name of the company and the brand itself. And what was very, very rewarding for us was the fact that when we started this process, we went out and the very first thing, and we work with a fantastic brand strategy agency actually based in Singapore called Shift Partners. I cannot highly recommend them enough. But the very first step of this process was to do a discovery before they even suggested to change the name of the company or what the brand refresh would even entail. They actually went out to all of our current customers, not all, but a select few. They went out to partners. They went out to industry leaders who just knew about Hapana through our circles. And they, of course, went to our internal staff, including myself and other executives, but staff throughout the organization. And the very first step was for them to basically interview all these different personas and user groups or people that interact with our company on a day-to-day to get a feel for how they would classify essentially our company as One Fit Stop and what our brand personality was and how they saw the market in general, as well as where they saw One Fit Stop fitting into the market and where our competitive edge would be. And what was the most fascinating thing, because the mandate that they had at the very beginning was essentially, and this was the program objective, was to sharpen and elevate the One Fit Stop, and we abbreviated to OFS, the OFS brand and experience for global expansion. So we really wanted to refresh that OFS One Fit Stop experience, but we also wanted to be able to position it that we were a global player, not just also localized in Australia. We really wanted to scale out internationally. And this survey at the beginning yielded some results. I'm going to go through that in a second, but I'm going to skip to the bit of the conclusion with this. But what happened after these results was that the agency sat us down, and by us, it was myself and Corey Law, our chief revenue officer, and they very nervously told us that they were going to recommend not doing a brand refresh and update to One Fit Stop, but to recommend that they are going to suggest we change the name of the company. And you can imagine, after operating the organization as One Fit Stop OFS for 7 years, and that being your baby that you brought out and gave to the world, and your entire culture centered around One Fit Stop, it was a big ask for someone and an agency that's just known you for 1 or 2 months at that point. So that's where it all led to. But it was the catalyst of the survey that was the pinnacle for really not only convincing the agency that this was needed, but also convincing myself and other executives and even our board of directors who were part of the final decision making to say, yep, let's do this. Let's change the name of the company and start afresh and reinvigorate this brand, and also our potentials to where we could be in the industry.
What do you think the charge behind changing the name? Where do you think that came from the people that you gave the survey to and the rebranding company?
So there was like a couple of key things that came out from the survey, and some of it was related to us and some of it was related to the industry. So just to sort of read off a couple of these key areas. One, the people in the industry, no matter where you were, employees or customers or partners, everyone sort of classified this archaic relationship that people have in the fitness industry with technology. It's been a foe, it hasn't been a friend historically. And there's a lot of animosity. Okay, we need a system, we just have to deal with what we get. Or there's 5 options on the table, I never know what to do. Or we don't have an in-house CTO, we're going to have to scrap together pieces to pull it together. And often there was a lack of customer experience in a lot of these solutions, meaning for their members or clients, and it was often back office or billing focused. There was blurred lines between, even from our standpoint as One Fit Stop, between, are we going after big boxes? Are we going after boutiques? Can we do both? How is it possible to do both? Historically, you've had boutique software, and then separate from that, you've had big box software, club software. So how do you also then position that together? And I guess the biggest thing from what the clients were also saying was that the integration of these systems, so being more of a ERP suite where you have your fundamental systems to run the business is all under one roof, where there's one single service and support team and an account manager that really understands what's going on. That is the pinnacle of really bringing it all together that everyone was saying. In addition to that, a lot of what we did was also analyze the market, and we also started to classify the different groups of software providers in the industry. And it was really interesting because some of the software providers literally only spoke about the features and functionality. And on the other side of it, on the other side of the coin, you had some providers that literally spoke about the solution and the outcome and what you could achieve with it. And we had to also figure out if the direction that we wanted to take was feature functionality driven versus solution focused and orientated, or a blend of both. And what actually came out of this was there was a brand personality test that they ran, and they basically, it was just super fascinating. They put up pictures with different sort of questions. For example, they would have 5 pictures of different animals, let's say, or 5 pictures of different celebrities or figureheads, or 5 pictures of different cars. And the question would be like, if you had to pick a car, what car would you pick to represent One Fit Stop? If you had to pick an animal, what animal would you pick? If you had to pick a celebrity, who would you pick and why? And what was interesting, there was 5 different questions in this test, and the brand personality that came out for One Fit Stop at the time was, the animal chosen was cheetah, okay, which represented speed, agility, and potential to be a leader, right, in the pack. The celebrity chosen was Lewis Hamilton, which represented excellence, confidence, and commands respect. Um, there was another one with animals as well, which was dolphin, which was smart, elegant, and communicators, which was really great to see because we do work really hard to be strong communicators with each of our customers. The car results was a Tesla Model S, which sophisticated, innovative, and makes a statement. And finally, there was a bit of a tech kind of a bunch of different tech images, and the image chosen was the Hyperloop, which is a bit of disruptor, risk taker, and leading edge. So something a bit more of a risk taker overall to obviously strive to do something a bit more grand in the industry, not much of the same. And this was probably one of the best exercises because this really started to classify what everyone felt our personality was in different forms. And at that point, that was when the agency sort of came up with this term engineered for engagement, which became like the tagline of this project. That we were, yes, we're a tech company, we build and we innovate, but the purpose of the innovation and the risks that we're taking to disrupt was to ensure that we create a high sense of a degree of engagement, not only for obviously our businesses that we service, but for the clients and members that use these gyms and fitness facilities, and the apps and the ways that they interact for those with those facilities is something that we've been focusing on, that customer experience heavily in our technology. Um, and after they presented all of this to us, they kind of said, well, one fit stop. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthy, 3 syllable, disjointed. We don't really feel like this personality comes out with this name. And it was more of a sentiment to the fact that they didn't feel, well, they would have, I'm sure, come up with a creative way to activate it to bring that personality to life. They didn't feel like it truly captured the essence of who we needed to be and who everyone thought our personality was in the industry and what we're striving to do.
Talking about rebranding agencies, and I know you said you absolutely love your agency, which was Shift Partners, correct?
Yes.
How did you find them? Did you interview a couple of different agencies? Were they just a recommendation? I'd love for you to expand a bit more on that for our FBP family that maybe is considering rebranding within their boutique or their fitness facility.
So, well, first of all, choosing a name for your company is extremely hard to begin with. Choosing a name in the fitness sector is even harder because pretty much every fitness domain in the world is taken. Trademark issues, domain issues, Facebook URLs not available. I mean, you name it, a gamut of issues. And what we decided to do was do online research, but also ask people for recommendations. So we started going deep with a few who basically got to learn our brand. We shortlisted about 3 different agencies. There was 2 in the US and then 1 in Singapore. But we actually contacted online a number of others that we also felt, thought were good online. But in the end, it was the referrals that really were great for us because you knew that others had used them and got a good result, and you could see the result. And every one of these agencies are going to present their case studies and what they did for other brands. But I think the big thing for us was, and why we selected Shift Partners, was that they were able to provide the partners in the agency as part of the core team. It wasn't just going to be pushed down the line to junior associates, depending on obviously how big the agency is. And we had visibility right to the owners of the organization, and they were all involved in the project, which meant that they not only were invested in it, but they all cared about the outcome. And when they got around the table, when we went with them to ideate and come up with creative solutions or activation campaigns, it was the whole organization typically, not just even the small project team. And going with that, let's call it mid-market agency but that does high-end work but they're more boutique, meaning they have visibility from partner down to associate, was really, really important for us. And this particular agency came from a referral from Corey, our chief revenue officer at One Fit Stop, who had done work with them when they had done some brand strategy work, I believe with some Intel or HSBC or some bank. So they were doing really high-end commercial work, but they were this boutique team that really cared about the outcome. And they loved working with founders and smaller teams and units, not just the big corps. And I think that was what got us over the line to commit to them. And also what we felt on the ground was that, yeah, there was that visibility right through the project with the partners. They came onto all the calls. They were at the table, ideating and figuring out the vision for the brand together with us, which was great for us to have a partner like that through the journey.
Well, I love that you've taken us through the journey of how you got to the decision to change the name. Now I'd like for you to expand on how you finally chose Hapana as the new name for your company.
So there was there was multiple ways you can tackle this. And we actually started by looking at different companies in the tech industry or not, and what the names represented. For example, you could have a company called Lemonade that sold insurance, and it had no correlation. It was just a fun name. And then you had companies like Asana or Headspace that just their whole purpose of the brand was light and offered beautiful experiences. And we started to really look at other names in the tech industry, and also how do we also bring out our personality. And to be honest, this was supposed to take a month, but it took 3 months because it was so difficult. And the best advice the agency gave us was, this name that we choose, it's not your DNA when you first hear it. Your DNA is one fit stop, and that's who you're always going to default to. So when we suggest a name, you may like it at the beginning, but there's a chance that you'll love it 2 weeks later. And the only way you're going to be able to get over that hurdle to love it is if you use it yourself on a day-to-day. So when you think about introducing yourself to a prospect or to a member, let's call it, if you're running a gym, you got to say, "Hi, I'm Jarron from Hapana," or "I'm Jarron from Asana," or wherever the new company name will be. And if you use it in a sentence and almost introducing yourself, or when you're on a podcast or whatever it's going to be, and it feels good, that's when you start to really get over that initial hurdle. So that was some great advice, because the early names are really hard. We try to go back to our roots as well as an organization, headquartered in Australia, but trying to grow internationally. And we try to use all slang words from Australia. And I'll tell you what, the Australian slang words are hilarious. And I don't know if it would fit the personality that we wanted to be. But in the end, what happened was we really loved, and I don't think I've told many people this, but we loved the word haptic. And haptic is essentially a setting on your iPhone, which is when you turn it on, when you tap the screen on some apps, it kind of gives that little buzz and sensation back, like almost a physical feedback when you touch it. But for me, it was the sense of touch, physical meets digital worlds. It's the sense of feedback in that loop. And we saw that in the brand, in the brand personality, that we are an innovator, and we're a risk taker, but we need to be good communicators, and that's what people think about us. And so this loop between physical and digital, and physical being the fitness industry and digital being what we're actually building as a tech company, was a great way in. And as one definitely should, you should all have, when you find a name, if you're thinking about even changing the name of your organization, trademark lawyers, because we spent then the next 2-3 weeks with our trademark lawyers figuring out, could we do haptic with a K or change the spelling, and would it be picked up, and what would be the risk in 6 months' time if we went through all this effort if there was a trademark issue. And so ultimately we said in the end that haptic wasn't going to be the go, but we liked the origins of it. And to be honest, with the experience that we had with the trademark, it was really painful, really expensive. And what we decided to do was, let's say, okay, let's just invent our own word, because at this point in time, whatever word we choose or name we choose, it's still going to be new in its category. It's still going to need to be adopted by us, our customers, our staff. But we don't want to run into these trademark issues, but we also want to be unique and seem to be unique in the industry. And so that was also where we went back to the slang words. We said, okay, can we combine haptic with this all these Australian slang words or other words, and it was again a hilarious exercise. But in the end, we ended up settling on a word which, again, part of our origins, we have a team that works for us, all employed by us, since the day we started in India. We found a Sanskrit word called ananta, which had the meaning of not ending or limitless or endless. I really like, collectively as an organization, we really loved that because it meant that if we were combining haptic with ananta, it was endless and limitless, digital and meets physical experiences. And it really meant that what we're trying to do was change things in the long run here. We're aiming big. It's a long fight to really make a huge impact that we want to make on the fitness industry. And this just gelled really well. But the other thing that really fit nicely was that Hapana, when it came out, it was simple to spell, easy to say, and it actually ended on a bit of a crescendo, Hapana, like it ends up with a bit of energy, and that also gave it just a bit of a spike that we needed and vigor. And we all really, really loved it from the moment we sort of saw it together and started using it. It caught on really, really quickly, as opposed to everything else that we were trying.
And so it is, Hapana.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
then the journey doesn't stop because it's all about activating it at that point. And if you're going to do a brand refresh, again, the focus is the activation of the brand. Okay, what are you going to do to change your logo? Or how do you got like 6 letters. What are you going to do with those 6 letters to create a brand that's going to be everlasting as well? Your logo, your icon, your color schemes, your photography that goes in the backdrop of everything, the icons. We went to naming each of our 5 key product arms that fit in with the theme. It really, that at that point in time, the project scaled because we were, it almost stalled at that point. We were trying to select a name, and the moment we locked on it and committed to it, everything picked up. And we had graphic designers, video editors, we had trade show booth designs coming up, we had potential social media campaigns that were sort of being designed. It was all happening at the same time, and it was really exciting because we had to choose the color palette, we had to choose how we wanted it to look and feel and get that personality across. And the one thing that we've done, and we've only just started to introduce some of the variations, we didn't want the brand activation to become stale in 2, 3, 5 years. We actually created a color palette that had like 10 different colors. And we figured out how all these colors work together. But when fall came last year, we decided, okay, we're going to use some of the new colors. And we changed the logo, the style, like everything looked different. Obviously, the integrity of the logo was there and the branding was there, but the color scheme made it all completely new and fresh. So we wanted to do things like that as well when we activated the brand that was unique, that could differentiate us as time went on if we needed to sort of refresh the look of it all.
You mentioned the logo, and I think this is another key piece to, again, any type of club out there that's looking to change and rebrand. Can you tell us quickly then, once you got the name, did you get the logo second, or was the logo first and then you fit the name to the logo? Talk a little bit about the remake of the logo.
So we chose the name first and then the logo after. It's really hard also to select a name if you don't really know what it could look like. So very early on, when we selected the name, the agency went and did like 6 potential variations of how you could activate it, all very, very different. And it was very funny. Corey and I were on the call watching the presentation, and the first 2 that came up were like, "Stop the call right here! Like that's it. We don't even need to see the other 4." And actually, one of the 2 was what we have today, and the other one was also very, very good. But once we saw it visually as like how it could be activated, the name was a definitive. It was like, this is definitely the name now, and it's just about finessing how it's going to look. And the agency did a good job at 6 very different ways to create a logo, 6 very different color palettes, 6 different social media campaigns, and they gave examples of how you could actually activate each of the 6. And that's the biggest thing also I'd recommend making sure when you select an agency or someone to help you with this process, often, like even when we were looking, it's like, okay, we'll present one or two options. And it's very hard to be completely satisfied with one or two options if you don't have a point of comparison. And when it's completely new and you have this, this old DNA in you of what you go back to all the time, it's often very hard to make that decision. So just make sure that when you engage in any agency or any provider, that they're going to be able to provide revisions and finesse it. And if you don't like it at all, like you should be okay to tell them, like, no, none of these work, none of the six work, start again, go back to the drawing board. And they should be receptive to it, because this is your brand ideally for life, for the longevity of your company, and you don't want to take any shortcuts on it.
Well, Jarron, I really appreciate all your honesty of just kind of putting it all out there on your journey, and I appreciate you sharing, the process. But before we go, I'd like for you just to talk about, maybe, I'm sure along the way there were, as much as you can be organized, think you're on top of everything, there was probably challenges that maybe you didn't see coming, or even after everything was done, what roadblocks did you encounter that maybe your story, you could help anybody out there thinking about rebranding for the new year?
I think our biggest roadblock came towards the end of the project. Sure, like in the middle of the project, timelines drew out when we had to select a name, and we wanted to make sure it was absolutely perfect. And I'm totally fine with the fact that it blew out there a little bit. But when it came time to actually changing over from One Fit Stop to Hapana, it became a full scale organization wide effort. We also had to hype it up internally and keep it really quiet to the market at the same time. So it's really difficult, because you kind of want to go to the market with a big bang and a big launch, but internally you want to also excite your employees. We had to coordinate a lot of logistics all at the same time. We made sure that all our employees had Hapana, apparel and hats and water bottles before we even launched. And then, some, depending on where your employees are, some got lost in the mail and all that jazz. But then when on the day of, you have to switch your website over, your social media over. The project really blew out. So, I mean, we had to assemble units and teams of people, someone to handle the social media handle switching over and investigate what it's going to do. How does LinkedIn do it? You have to submit a form to get approval to change your name. And what about your registered company names? Like, we hadn't considered all of these things. Our registered company name was One Fit Stop before, and now we have to register a new trading name and tell the banks. And what happened was, as we went deeper, the biggest learning was that it actually involved almost all departments across our organization. And if we had other things that were planned over that period in time, we actually had to put a pause to it, because it wasn't practical balancing everything at the same time. And these were the little gotchas. Like, we didn't fully realize that your HR systems had to be updated after the company was updated, after your LinkedIn was updated, and one won't verify before the other. And so that was honestly some of the most complex areas when we're implementing the new brand, which went seamlessly in the end, but it was an all hands on deck scale effort.
Jarron, thank you again from everybody at the Fitness Business Podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. We appreciate it.